Hello and welcome back. Today we'll be completing the PyMol activity, building small molecules. So for this activity we will need PyMol, the educational version, installed, and you'll also need a mouse. So if you haven't installed the educational version of PyMol, you can do that at this time. You need to stop the video and do that. If you have the open source version, that is not the educational version with no license file, you probably won't have the features that you need to complete this activity. So if you are not an educator or a student, you may need to purchase a license file in order to purchase a license in order to complete this activity. So if you are not in my class, you can request a license file from your instructor. I cannot provide license files to people who are not in my courses. Alright, so for this activity we're going to be learning to build small molecules in PyMol. So this is just an introductory activity, and so we're going to be building cyclohexanone, hexane, ethanol, dichloromethane, and Dimethylformamid, and we're going to take a snip of those and upload them to a word processor file such as Word or a LibreOffice. We'll be using LibreOffice today. Okay, so I've created a LibreOffice file here with all of the molecules that we'll be building with the names of them. Okay, so I have a list that I've created, so it might be a good idea to start with that. So you can open your word processor, and I've added my name, the title of the project, the date, and then a list of each of the molecules that I'll be creating today. So I've also listed some commands here just so I can remember them. PyMol isn't my first choice of software to use, but since it's open source, we'll be using it for this project, so there'll be no cost to the students. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. For me, I'm using Linux, so I want to open PyMol, and I also want to open my Snip program, which is called Shutter. So I actually already have that going here. You're probably not using Linux. If you need to snip a picture, if you're in Windows, you can type snip into the search box, and that should bring up a program option for you called Snip, where you can do the same thing. Okay, so we're going to be using PyMol, and I'm going to be using Shutter, and we'll also be using a word processor. So if you're in Windows, that'll be PyMol, Snip, and Word probably. Okay, and so I'm going to go ahead and launch PyMol. For me, I have this launcher that I've created that launches from the command line. If you're in Windows, you probably are going to have a launcher for your version. You can see here that I've already uploaded the license file. So for PyMol, we have a command line entry box on the upper left. We won't be using that today for this project. Your workspace is the large black space here, and these are some options on the upper right. We'll be using the builder. Over here on the middle right, you'll see the objects that we have for this that are in our window, in our main window. And then on the lower right, there are some other options. So we'll be just to familiarize you with the workspace a little bit, I went ahead and demonstrated that. And again, you will need a mouse for this. I don't think this will work too well just on a tablet or a laptop without a mouse. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. The first molecule we want to build is cyclohexanone. So this molecule is an sp3 hybridized 6-membered ring for most of the carbons. So all of the sp3 hybridized carbons have 2 hydrogens attached. There's also a carbon in the ring with an oxygen double bond. Okay, this carbon-oxygen double bond would be sp2 hybridized. So let's get started creating that. So for PyMol, if you look on the upper right, you can choose the builder option. This may not work for you if you don't have the proper version installed. So I'm single clicking on builder, with my left mouse button, and I'm just going to choose OK. And notice that it's loaded the builder on the upper left. I want to go ahead and dock this builder, so I'm going to drag it to the top area, okay, and then release it, and now I have my builder docked. You don't have to dock it, it's just a little easier to see for the video. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and choose the sp3 hybridized 6-membered ring, which is right here. So I've highlighted that. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and click on it. And it says pick locations to attach a cyclohexyl. So over here on the lower right, I'm going to choose create as a new object because I'm not attaching it as a cyclohexyl group. I want to create a new object. So I'm going to click that. If I want to change the orientation of the molecule, I'm going to use the left mouse button to rotate. Okay. If I want to zoom in, I can use the right mouse button to zoom and the middle mouse button to move the molecule. You can always also right click in the workspace and choose zoom, okay, or right click orient, or right click and center. So this will give you some quick options to visualize the molecule a little better. Okay, so we can rotate this around and look at it. Alright, so I'm going to zoom out a little bit, and we need a carbon-oxygen double bond on one of those carbons. It doesn't matter which one. So I'm going to choose oxygen. Now I have the option to pick an atom to replace with oxygen. I want to replace one of these hydrogens, so I've clicked on it. Now I've created cyclohexanol. I don't really want cyclohexanol, I want cyclohexanone, so I need to I need to create a double bond, and here's the option for a double bond right here. So I'm going to choose that, and then click the bond I want to set to double. Okay, notice the hydrogen on that carbon was removed because now we have an sp2 hybridized carbon. That carbon now has 3 other atoms attached. This may not be the best orientation or the best configuration for this molecule, so I'd like to minimize it. If we go back to our LibreOffice file here, it says action and clean to minimize it. So let's choose that. So over here on in my object list, you can see where I've created the new object under all. So this is the object that we have just created in our window. I'm going to choose A for action and then clean for minimize. Okay, so that gives us a better configuration, a more natural configuration for our molecule. Now I want to just do 1 or 2 more things to make this molecule pop, so I could maybe enter that into, say, a journal article file or something. So let's choose show as sticks. Okay, well that doesn't look too great. Okay, it looks okay, but let's choose something else. So let's choose action preset and then ball and stick. Okay, and that looks kind of cute. You might want to change the color scheme. If you go over to your object again, over here we can choose color, C for color, and then by element, and you can choose any of these options if you want to change the coloration. So just whatever you think looks good to you. Okay, choose some different options here. And doesn't really matter which one you choose, whatever you think looks good to you. Now I want to use the Snip program, so I'm going to choose selection. Okay, and then I want to select the object I want to take a little picture of. Again, that would be Snip in Windows. And then double click in the square that I've just selected. I can choose Control C and go over to my Word file or word processor file, and under cyclohexanone I'm going to choose Control V. Okay, I want to size this so that it will be properly sized for my file. It doesn't really matter, and you don't have to go to great lengths to edit this. Just as long as it can be viewed clearly, it will be fine. So now we've created cyclohexanone. Let's move forward and create cyclohexane. Cyclohexane is a simple straight chain hydrocarbon with 6 carbons and the respective hydrogens that are associated with it. So we can create that pretty simply. So first let's get rid of what we had previously. So right click and choose delete all. Alright, and there's another way to delete from the object button or the object row, and I'll show you that next time. So in order to create this molecule, I need to choose CH4, not C, because that won't work. We've got to create this new object. I'm going to choose CH4, and then I'm going to, over here on the lower right, create as new object. Okay, so now I have methane, but I don't need methane, I need hexane. So let's middle mouse, move this to the left, and I'm going to add some carbons on here. So I'm going to add a carbon to where one of these hydrogens is. Choose the C for carbon. Okay, now click on a hydrogen. Now I have ethane. Click on another hydrogen. Now I have propane. Click on another hydrogen. Now I have butane. Another hydrogen is pentane, and another hydrogen is hexane. Alright, now let's go over here and choose A and then clean. Alright, and let's choose A, preset, and ball and stick. And you can play around with these options if you want and just choose what looks good to you. Let's just orient it so that it looks where you can see most of the hydrogens and that sort of thing. So let's snip it or shutter it, depending on which program you're using. So I'm going to drag a box around the molecule and double click. Control C and back to my word processor file and Control V. Now I want to size it properly, and I don't really care how big these are, just as long as everything fits for my students. And next we need to create ethanol. Okay, so I have a example here of what ethanol looks like. This is just a wiki page. So it's a CH3, CH2, OH, going back to PyMol. I need to delete this old object. So if you go over here, you'll see our objects are listed. Now I could create it on the same workspace. Let's just do that real quick and then I'll delete it again. So I could choose CH4 and then following my mouse over here to the lower right, create as new object, and that would just add it into the same window. I could even move it. That's moving both of them. Anyway, PyMol isn't my first software again, so let's see if I can. There we go. No, it didn't select just that one. Selection. Trying to move that. Well, anyway, I'm just going to show you how to delete this. So if you choose action and delete, oh, that would be delete selection. Action and delete object. You can get rid of the objects that you created one at a time. So I want to go ahead and delete all of them, so I'm going to choose right click and then delete all. So I just want to create ethanol, so I'm going to start with methane. So let's choose that and create as new object. Okay, so now I need to add one carbon, so adding a carbon, choose the C, click on a hydrogen. Okay, that now I have ethane, and now I want to add an oxygen, so I need to add an OH group, and the hydrogens again are added automatically. So choose O, and then click on a hydrogen, and it will add an OH. Okay. Now I want to minimize this, so let's choose Done, and that'll get rid of that that information in the window. So let's choose A for action and then clean, and then A and preset and ball and stick. Okay, so now I have ethanol, and maybe let's change the color. So going back to the object row, let's choose by element and just pick something. Let's see. I don't know. It's not. That's pretty good. So we can right click and choose zoom. That's a little better. So let's snip it. Selection. Control C, and back to the project. Under ethanol, Control V, and I'm going to size it appropriately for my entry. Okay. Next I need to create dichloromethane. So let's look at what that molecule looks like. And again, you should know this if you're an organic chemistry student. This is the common name for this molecule, and it is, methylene chloride is the common name for this molecule. Okay, and so this is a carbon with 2 chlorines and 2 hydrogens on it. Okay, and so we're going to create this in PyMol. So let's right click and delete all and choose CH4 and create as new object. Okay, now we need to put 2 chlorines on here. So let's color this a little differently so that the chlorines will show up a little clearer. Okay, so I have a chlorine up here. Let's choose that and replace 2 of the hydrogens with chlorines. Now that looks a little hard to see, so let's choose Action, Preset, and Ball and Stick. Okay, and there's our dichloromethane. You could try A for Action and then Clean, and it didn't do much, but it did clean a little bit. Let's go ahead and snip that. Selection, and remember that this program I'm using right now is not part of PyMol. That's just a program called Shutter that allows you to snip part of your screen out and create it as a picture. Okay, so you'll have to use something that you have in your operating system to get that picture, and it's okay if you have to do a screenshot and paste it in. If that's the way you have to do it, that's perfectly fine. I'll accept that if you're in my class. Okay, and so if you're not in my class, you probably don't need to be making screenshots of your molecules, but I'm just including those instructions here for my students. The next molecule is N,N-dimethylformamid, and we're going to be creating this molecule. So it's a carbon-nitrogen bond. That's an amide bond that has a carbon, a carbon-oxygen double bond with a nitrogen connected to the carbon is called an amide. This nitrogen-carbon-oxygen system. This is actually an sp2 hybridized system. And so on the nitrogen for N,N-dimethylformamid, we have 2 methyl groups. That's why it's called N,N-dimethylformamid, because there are 2 methyls on the nitrogen. So let's go ahead and create that, and we can probably just use the methane that we already have. Let's see if that'll work. You know what, I'll go ahead and delete it. So let's just delete all and start over. Let's choose CH4 and create as new object. Okay, so we need to turn one of these hydrogens into an oxygen, so let's choose the O and then an H for the hydrogen. That gives us an OH. That's a single bond. And then the other hydrogen over here on the right I want to turn into a nitrogen, so let's choose N and then click on that. So we have our nitrogen carbon oxygen system created, but we need to change it a little bit. Let's choose the double bond up here on the upper left and click on the bond we want to change to double. Alright, so now we have our carbon oxygen double bond and a nitrogen, and this nitrogen has 2 hydrogens on it. We need to change those to methyl groups. So let's click on the CH4 and click on each hydrogen to change them to methyl groups. Now this isn't appropriately minimized, so let's choose A and watch this, choose Clean. Okay, so you can see that N,N-dimethylformamid, the carbon nitrogen oxygen system is linear because it's an sp2 hybridized system. Now let's choose A for Action and then Preset and then Ball and Stick. Okay, maybe I want those carbons to be a different color. Let's choose Color by Element and then something like that. I don't know. I don't like any of these choices. You can change the colors from the command line. I'm not going to do that today, but if you don't like the color, you can choose something else. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and use my shutter program to snip a little screenshot. So I'm going to choose selection, and then, oh, that did not work. That did not work either. Let's go back. Let's orient. So if you, I don't know if I showed this earlier, if you right click and choose zoom, let's move things around here. So right click and choose zoom, that'll bring it into view. Right click and choose orient. Right click and choose center, and zoom and center do similar things. So because zoom will center it also. Okay, but I'm going to move it. I'm going to rotate it a little bit and zoom out. That, remember, right mouse button zooms out. Okay. Alright. Now I'm going to shutter and selection. And Control A, Control C. And let's paste that in, Control V. So again, the right mouse button will, I've done this video several times, so let me see if I went over this. The right mouse button will zoom in and out. The left mouse button rotates the molecule, and the middle mouse button moves the molecule. So right mouse button zooms in and out, middle mouse button moves the molecule around, left mouse button rotates it, okay? You can also right click and choose zoom, right click and choose orient, right click and choose center. Okay, so hopefully that helps, and thank you for watching the video. I'll see you in the next video.